Hey friends, Pastor Michael from Organic Church, here with Sydney Erickson, Don Reed, Beth. I lost your name entirely sitting here looking at you.
Jarvis.
I lost your first name looking at you. Beth Jarvis, Nick Offolter, and Pastor Roger Deerdorf. That was weird.
We're just going to call her Sprite.
Sprite, yeah, her name is now Sprite. Like, I lost your first name. I'm looking at you going, what is her name again? Well, I'll tell you, it has been a long day for me today, so I'm looking forward to the laughs and the fun conversation. So tonight's topic, this is an easy one. Beth, it's an easy one for you.
Okay.
Well, she's got a whole book of notes.
Here's the thing. They both come like with full notes prepared.
Yeah.
I show up with a hope and a prayer.
Listen, I'm calling Dawn. Hey, what do you got on notes?
So really her notes are your notes, right? Yeah. She's trying to copy your notes.
She don't give any info up.
Okay, so the topic is, have you seen an example of evangelism be fruitful? I have lots of opinions on this, but I don't want to start. So.
Well, I think, if you go to an evangelist to listen to him, you need to go with an open heart and allow the spirit that's there, as long as it's a good spirit.
So you're talking about going to see somebody. I think in my mind, the question was more like, if I'm talking to you about Jesus on the street, like you and I meet, or I'm having dinner and you're my waiter and I say, hey, do you know Jesus? Like, have you ever seen that be fruitful? That was what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
Roger's like, well, there goes my notes.
I'm done.
I'm done. I'm out for the night.
Next.
Roger Deerdorf signing off.
Well, I think it's kind of like you could be planting that seed. You might not ever see it flourish, but I think a lot of the times it does eventually. Mm-hmm. But again, maybe you won't see it.
Yeah. Okay. Good thought.
But wouldn't that be when you would go to hear an evangelist? If he didn't plant that,
he's trying to defend his standpoint.
Yeah,
you don't have to defend yourself, Roger.
If he didn't plant that seed,
you don't have to defend yourself. It's okay to think that.
Okay, all right.
I don't know
if he didn't plant that church.
Yeah,
I don't know. Is there a whole lot of people doing that these days?
No. So fivefold ministry.
I don't want to say you're old, Roger, but there might be a generational gap there that's causing this.
Well, so think about that. Like Elizabeth Howard. Mm-hmm. While she is technically a prophet, probably operates out of the evangelism house as well. I would say Holly does. I would say that Sean Archer, very much so. Like, their passion is not to be planted in one place preaching the gospel. It's to go from place to place. So that is an evangelist. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But now I'm getting to my point. You just relax over there. He's going to touch his microphone in a second, and then I'm going to have to hurt him. He's going to do it just to make me mad. Dan Crone is probably one of the strongest evangelists in our church. Now, I have heard stories. Dan will be working at work in Columbus, Cincinnati, wherever he ends up, working online, and he'll just be talking to the guy next to him about Jesus. He has no idea if this guy's saved, if he's a Christian, if he even knows who Jesus is, but he just doesn't stop. And then they might be 3 states away, and he's like, you should come to our church sometime. Like, dude, he doesn't stop. And it's not something that you see very often. Florence, very much so, but Florence operated out of all five of the fivefold ministry, in my opinion. She could do it all. Yeah. But she would, if she saw somebody in Walmart, she would stop and pray for him. She would talk to him about Jesus. She didn't know if they're saved or not. She didn't care. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that happens as much as it used to. I don't think you see people actively out in the community engaging people about faith, religion, Jesus, any of those things anymore. But to your point, Roger, that there is still merit to evangelism, like in a building, going somewhere.
Right.
Like when we did the event here with Elizabeth Howard, I don't know how many people were here, especially for the third session.
I don't know. There was a bunch.
There were a lot of people here. And it was 3 sessions. We sat through 3 sessions of messages. There was some laying on of hands and all of those things, but the evangelism was in her travels to this particular community to preach.
Right.
So there is still merit in that. It's just,
Thank you.
It's a little bit different than what my mind was thinking.
You're not wrong.
That's because you have a young mind.
You're exactly right.
Mine's about wore out.
You're exactly right. So the question is, examples of evangelism being fruitful. Have you seen examples of it? So does anybody have an example of evangelism? Has anybody ever witnessed somebody evangelizing where it has been fruitful?
I don't know if it's fruitful because like there's the guys that are standing on the side of the curb.
Oh man, I love those guys.
And you know, you don't know what people are thinking in their car. Like maybe that's when they came to the Lord, but we don't know that.
Sure. So great point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I
Unlikely, but-
no, I think it is a great point because I think a lot of times we're probably not going to see it be fruitful. So that's a fair point.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. So what have you seen that you think is fruitful? Like to me, those guys doing that, rain, snow, sunshine, they don't care. They'll be out there all day long.
Yeah.
There's also a guy that gives flowers too. Have you seen him? He's got this
at the
5-gallon
square?
bucket full of flowers.
Yeah.
And-
Square in Philly?
Up by Walmart.
Yep.
Yeah.
He
I've
just
seen
Yeah.
hand them out.
Yeah.
Like that's just his kind of a ministry that he has that he does. And it's pretty impressive. Anybody else have any? I have one.
Is it going to last an hour?
Maybe.
It may need
Because
to.
it needs to.
It needs to, yeah, because it's the only one we got, baby. Actually, it could last an hour.
Okay, here we go.
It's this one.
Oh.
Do you realize how many people we are reaching that are not members of our church? Okay, so when somebody says on Facebook, hey, and I've seen you do this, hey, what's a good podcast you're listening to?
I did
Check
that
out
today.
this one.
I did it today.
Like,
Yeah.
it's real life. It teaches you a little something, something, but it's also fun and entertaining at the same time, which was the whole purpose of putting this group together, of being in this room on Wednesday nights. So that's evangelism.
Mind
that's
blown.
Yeah.
We're evangelizing
circle.
and don't even realize a lot of times that that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Jesus to people who may have never heard the gospel beyond our voices with faces they have never seen before.
They probably don't want to see him.
No.
I was gonna say, that's a good thing.
Yeah, probably not. At least not Rogers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He wants to put a monkey face on my bio.
That's what I'm going to do.
And you know what I told him? As long as it's got one of those white
Scruffy.
beards,
Yeah.
he can put it on there.
I don't know. Some of those little monkeys are cute.
Like a little capuchin monkey, the little black and white ones, they are
Yeah.
cute. They're cute. You know, if you put a little sign that says Jesus saves around their neck and let them run around town, that's evangelism. It counts. I've always wanted a capuchin monkey. My wife says absolutely not because they're disgusting animals, which may be true, but I still want one. It can't be any worse than having kids. Right?
Yeah, but having that with the kids?
Yeah,
5 kids?
Well, I mean,
and 2 dogs?
if we sell the kids, we can buy the monkey, right? Because they aren't cheap. So I'm just saying.
Picture it now. Michael and his monkey in the basement.
We're locked in the basement because she ain't letting us come upstairs. I got a monkey. That is it.
They got a laundry chute, so that's how it's going to get.
That's how I get fed, through the laundry chute. Through the laundry chute. It's got a separate exit too, so I could just go out of the house that way, come in the house that way. Should just keep the deadbolt locked on the door at the top of the steps. Live in my basement forever. Roger, I'm gonna need you to run some electric for me so we can have a stove down there.
Little apartment down there.
What am I? I'm in. Oh, Ross had a capuchin monkey on Friends. We are way off topic, but
Yes.
that was a
Oh,
capuchin
yeah.
monkey. So I will
Yeah.
name my capuchin monkey Ross. There we go. I've already named him. Somebody find me one.
Surprised you're not already on eBay.
I was just thinking I could hop on Pet Finder right now and probably buy one by the time this podcast is
If
over.
anyone has one, let us know.
Goodness.
That was like me asking. Did you see I asked if anyone had a hedgehog?
Yeah, I was.
My aunt who works at the library that your kids go to.
Oh yeah.
They're wanting to do a presentation about hedgehogs, I guess. So she was looking for one and she texted me, strange question, but and then so I'm like,
Very
what? I think I can find someone.
Very
And-
strange question.
Yeah. But then my mother-in-law was like, Chase, please don't tell me you're trying to get a hedgehog. He's like, no.
Oh goodness. Those are just like spiky rats to me.
Yeah,
They're just
they're-
like they're varmints.
They're odd.
I'm not really interested in that, but anyhow, any other examples of evangelism before we really jump topics and who knows where we end up?
Well,
Oh, because I'm prepped to talk about news, by the way, just so we're all on the same
Yeah,
page.
well,
He's
I
on one.
figured that.
Listen, I was gonna suggest it for next week's topic, but I don't know if it's gonna hold out that long. Just like
Well,
how you consume news and what it does to you.
Oh.
Because my wife is fasting social media right now.
Yeah, I did that last year.
And so, like, I'm realizing that that's the only way she consumes news.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
through social media. Well, that's dangerous, y'all. Okay, stop.
Yeah.
Time out. Back to evangelism. Okay. That's another great way, by the way. I also,
Yes.
Marcus is really like, I don't know that Marcus posts any like of his, like, he doesn't like type out anything on Facebook. He
Right.
shares
Yes. Yeah.
pictures and graphics that he finds, and they're almost always all about how great God is. So
Yep.
that's another great form of
Yeah.
evangelism.
Yep.
So
In my notes, I just had written.
I love that she said in my notes.
I had written down that we are to share our faith,
Mhm.
and we are to speak boldly of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And if we do that, if we sow and we water, we sleep well at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so we don't always. A lot of times, we when we share the gospel, we think that, oh, I have to read them a passage of scripture. I have to be able to quote a particular passage of scripture. That's not how it works. It tells us that we will overcome the world by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So our testimony is really the one thing that we can share. And I always, when I share my testimony, I always go back to the, well, if he did it for me, he can do it for you. Because I've been there, I've seen it, I've lived it. If he can do it for me, he can certainly do it for you.
I remember when my sister asked me, well, how do you get saved? Or Mark
Yeah.
asked me, how do I get saved? And I did, it's as simple as ABC.
Yeah. I'll
Admit, believe, confess.
I'll never forget, because Mark had messaged me about it as well, and I said, "Listen, the great part is you don't need me for that. Like I don't have to be there for that." And I just explained to him, this is all you need to. You need to believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. Admit that you are a sinner, and change your way of life. Like stop being a sinner. Like just you don't want to consume yourself with that. And then I always tell everybody the next most important thing: but don't beat yourself up when you fail.
Right.
Because you are going
When you fall down.
to fail.
Yeah.
Things are going to happen. The world is going to knock you down, but that's okay. Stand back up,
Get back up.
and say that I am going to continue to walk this. So,
Especially at the beginning. I
oh
feel.
yeah.
Well, and I think two things happen. Hearts are transformed
Oh, for sure.
and regeneration, new birth.
Well, most people don't realize that they're failing until they're actually trying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until
Well, you don't know what failure is until you're
trying
Right.
to change and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
make things happen. That you're going. The end result is most likely you're going to fail a few times. I mean, that's like with anything in life. So failure is a big part of success. I mean, it's the same thing with your relationship with God. You're going to start out. You are who you are at that point. You're going to try to build on that, and there's going to be stumbling blocks along the way, and you have to expect that, and you have to accept it, and be ready for that, and to have the right reaction to that failure, and know to go right back to God when you fail. To, to get back on. But if you're not doing that, a lot of times I'm not even sure if people realize that they're failing. Like they're stuck in their lives, they're stuck in their daily routine.
And emotions.
Things aren't going right. They're not happy. They're depressed. But it's almost like they don't realize it.
Well, because we allow our minds to think that that's how the world works.
Right.
And because
Yeah,
the
they're
world
blaming
works
the
that
world.
way, we have to live that
And
way.
you're consuming nothing but that. So,
Yep, and you're basically letting the world and the things around you dictate
and define
how you behave and define your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so without God, without the Word, that's what it does. The world will end up defining you in the wrong ways.
Yep. When I was going through the custody battle for my oldest two kids, I stood on the statement that my past does not define me. God does. My past does not define me. The things that I have done and failed at do not define me. God defines me. That means if I did those things and I admit that I did those things, that doesn't mean I'm going to be doing those things in the future, because God can change all of that.
Yeah, and it's one of the hardest hurdles, because you even get to a point where you truly feel that God has forgiven you, that you have God's forgiveness, you have His mercy and His grace, but there are certainly human beings around you that have not forgiven you, that are not giving you grace. So you constantly have to deal with that, and that's another part of it is, as long as you live in this world, you have to deal with judgmental people. You have to deal with people that may never get over something you did in your past life.
Yeah.
And that's a part of it.
Yeah.
But again, that comes through God's grace, but it's a lot harder to get it through, our actual loved ones sometimes. That's hard to do, which makes your relationship with Him even more important.
I feel like a lot of the ones that don't forgive you, or not even forgive you, like forget the things that you did in the past, a lot of them aren't Christians
Sure.
or know God.
No.
Like if they, if
Well,
they,
because if they understood grace and mercy
Exactly.
on their life, they would be able to handle
Yeah.
it with other people.
Yeah.
Now, I'll be honest with you. There are, man, I could tell you stories that would, like, I can't share them on a podcast. That's, I'll give you this. I don't know if I can.
could your life also be a Lifetime movie?
Oh,
like mine?
no, my life would not be a
Don't say
lifetime
a
movie.
Lifetime movie.
My life would be one of those movies that would, like, it would be a suspense thriller, and you would just assume that I'm going to die at every turn. Like, that's what it would be. That's what it would be. So this was a long time ago, and so I want to be very clear that this was a long time ago. I was dating a girl who was living with me, and she got mad at me and left my house, and she went to my parents' house and ended up having a physical relationship with my brother the 2 days that she was at my parents' house, and then came back to live with me. Okay. So I have not forgotten that happened.
Right.
I have convinced myself that I have forgiven them for it. And I believe that I have. I believe that I've grown past, like, being bitter about
Yeah.
it. But when I see either of them, I still think about it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to get past that. And so it's hard to blame either of them. Like, because they're both grown adults. Like, you
Right.
know what you're doing. So I can't put blame on one or the other. It's a situational. And the other day I was sitting, I don't remember where I was at. And I thought, you know what? So many people don't realize how much God can change in your life.
Oh, yeah.
And I picked up my phone and I sent a text to my brother that says, hey, I know this isn't your thing, but I'd love to see you at church on Sunday. It was the hardest thing for me to do.
Yeah.
Because if he shows up here and he understands grace and mercy, I have to forgive him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, genuinely forgive
Yeah.
him for what happened. And that's going to be hard. Like, that'll be probably one of the hardest things I ever have to do. But for me, that was a big step in evangelism, because now I'm not just trying to serve people who don't know or
Right.
who maybe I don't know. So, like, I'll tell you about Jesus in passing when I'm at Walmart, and then I'll leave and probably never see you again in my life. But now I'm doing it to people that
And
I
like
will
personal connections.
spend my life knowing
emotional
them.
connections with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
struggle. That's hard.
Yeah, because you could have just kept going on like,
Yeah.
well, he's over there.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
I don't need to
Listen,
evangelize
I
him.
talk to my sister at the very least 3 times a month.
Mm-hmm.
And like, usually we're exchanging text messages, but nothing like, she doesn't come over for dinner or anything. Like, she lives 3 blocks away. My kids go to her house.
Yeah.
Her kids come to my house. I say 3 blocks. It's not even that. I could hit her house with a rock from my house. It just happens to be up the road. But so we converse regularly. I talk to my mom and dad literally every day. Like, whether I see them in person or send a text message, I talk to them every day. I talk to my brother 3 times a year. That's Thanksgiving, Easter, and Christmas.
Yeah.
When we're at my parents' house for a holiday. Beyond that,
Yeah.
unless he needs something and he sends me a text, like, that's it. And I don't want to be that way. I don't want to, because I know that that's not how God would want a family to be.
Right. Right.
But at the same time, I also can't change who he is and what he does. So now I have a question. At what point do you stop? And I don't want to say stop evangelizing, but stop stressing about whether or not they know Jesus. Like, my mom attended here for a short while and stopped coming. She had a bad experience with a person and just never came back. And she said, I'll never come back. Like, her words were, I will never be back.
I think when it starts to like give you a sour taste in your mouth for evangelizing, I guess, almost being bitter about it and looking at it the wrong way, but like, you just have to be mindful.
See, I look at it as a waste of time.
Yeah.
I think
in
as long as you truly love the person, you're never going to quit feeling that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Like,
you're
you'll
just
always
not.
want them.
Yeah,
to
you're
be
always
saved.
going to have
Yeah,
that one
definitely.
desire for them on the very last
Right.
day to change their lives.
Right.
I don't think you're ever going to get rid of that.
Well,
Yeah.
but maybe it's not somebody that's close. Maybe it's just somebody that you know at work. And let's say you've told them, like, hey, do you know Jesus? Or you've, talked to them about scripture, or they've been through a hard time and you've kind of helped walk them through that. And they're still like, no, I don't want to hear about it. Or I don't like, I'm not into that. At what point do you go, okay, respect their opinion and stop?
Well, you've planted the seed.
Sure.
God will do the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll either bring someone else
Right.
to give them the word, and that they'll listen
So-
to that.
Because if you push too hard to the point where you make them
Right.
angry about it, then
Yeah.
you're not doing
Then
your
They
they're
job.
beat you up in
really-
the parking
Yeah,
lot
you're not.
because-
Yeah.
Then it's doing
But
the
you're not doing
opposite.
your job.
Yeah.
You're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
So I guess sometimes you
Yeah.
gotta know when to quit. But like
Read the
that's
room.
a good point that she made was
There will always be, well, and I always say that if God tells you to do something and you don't do it, he'll backfill. He's going to, that
Yeah.
task is not going to go unfinished, but you are going to bring something special to it. And so the idea is that you do. But when you get to that point, he's still going to backfill. He's still going to make sure that the word is there.
Yeah.
Okay. We've made it 20 minutes.
I believe it took more than one contractor to finish the Washington Monument. So, and if you look at it, you'll
It's two
see there's
different colors.
two different colors, and that's why
Yeah.
I believe they started it during the Civil War,
Something like that.
and then of course they had to quit, and then
Yep.
after the fact they finished
Yep.
it. So you might just be starting the base,
Yeah. I knew that.
and that and then later on somebody will come along and hopefully finish it off. But yeah, I don't think you can feel.
That's a good point. But also to that, I feel like we shouldn't go in with the mindset of like, well, I'm going to try this one time, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we just kind of have to read the situation,
I
and
had
the
a-
relationship.
I had a girl
throughout
one time who worked for me. She was pregnant at the time, and she asked me when her baby was born if I would baptize her baby, and I politely declined. And I said, not that I don't want to baptize your baby, but you need to understand what that means
Yeah.
before we baptize your
Yeah.
baby. Like, you can't just, you make that decision for a baby and it doesn't change anything.
Right,
It doesn't,
right.
like, there's an age of accountability.
Mhm.
There's a time when you have to make that decision and say, this is where I want my life to be.
Yeah.
And there are kids who want to get baptized. I will baptize them all day long. Some of them, I'll hold them under a little extra for you if that's what you want. I'm just saying. Kidding. Don't call CPS. But my point is that there's still a certain understanding that
Yeah.
generally people have to have in life to understand, like,
Yes.
what the word of God means.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can give you scripture all day long. I can tell you about Jesus. I can tell you all of those things. And again, planting seeds, nothing bad, nothing wrong with that. But until they make the decision
On
to
their own.
show up in a church or to get a Bible and read it,
Yeah.
things like that. That's
Even when I got baptized, like I knew, I wanted to. I never had before, but I wasn't going to ask Mallory, like, hey, do you want to?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no.
it's a decision you
It's
make.
her own decision.
Yeah, it's a decision you
Yeah.
make. Yeah.
I look at evangelist preacher, Pastor Mike Crank, who led my husband to the Lord.
Mhm.
He showed up at my stepson's funeral to console a family that nobody knew him. And they prayed with us and invited us to church and talked with us. Had he not done that, my husband probably wouldn't have come to the Lord.
Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. That's success right there. Like, that's like the number one success story because you really can't ask for anything more. For an evangelist to show up, somebody you never met before, somebody you don't know from Adam, and says, hey, I want to pray with you guys. And that makes a difference in a life to the point to where they become saved. That is like evangelism.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the following Sunday we were at his church. My husband gave his life to the Lord.
Yeah.
I rededicated mine.
That's amazing.
And he just was that type of preacher. He brought them in. He led them to the Lord a lot. And he was just a salvation preacher. He brought them in. They were there for a while and they built themselves up and then they moved on.
Yeah.
And not that they were moving on for any other reason.
Well, but you
But
grow. It's a season. It's a
it
season.
is.
And
But he just had that.
that was his.
That was his.
That
thing.
was his
he
gifting.
was a salvation
Yeah,
preacher.
that was his gifting. And here's the thing. Churches like us depend on that.
Yeah.
We need those people who can go there, really get the base of what they need, and then go out and serve. Do you know what I mean? It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And I always say that every church operates in a specific way.
Right.
Not all pastors are that way. Not all pastors are like me. Pastor Rod across town, he loves to talk about like the nuts and bolts of a Bible story. He wants to break it down and give it to you play by play. That's what he does. He's really good at it. And I can find myself listening to him for hours, like just in casual conversation, just talking about Nehemiah or whatever. Like he just has such a wealth of knowledge. And then I think most of the people in our church would not want to listen to that
Yeah.
week in and week out because it's like, but you'll notice his congregation, that's what they thrive on. Like they love that. But that's not for everybody. And so just understanding that if somebody has prayed with you and you need to find a church, it's not always the first church. It doesn't always have to be the first church. There's going to be a stylistic difference everywhere you go. So I think that's important. Beth just shaking the table now.
She's telling us it's time to go. I heard something today. I don't know if it would be evangelism, but it was kind of something that would make someone think, you know. But they're like, "Oh, I don't believe in God," and it's like, "That's all right. He believes in you." That's all you gotta say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like,
Yes.
oh, "Okay, I like that."
Yeah.
You too.
So-
Yes, I like that.
Yeah. I don't believe in God. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to beat you up over it.
Yeah. Which then they kind of broke that down, like the thinking or the thought process of us, like,
Oh, yeah.
does God really
Yep.
like, why would he believe in me?
Yep.
But he does, you know?
It's one of those I shared on Sunday, you know, when a church serves a community and the community receives that service, and then they're like, "Oh, well, I don't go to church. I don't believe in," but they'll come to the church for service, like for if it's a soup kitchen or a clothes closet or a food pantry, whatever. They don't necessarily attend a church or believe in God or want to be faith-based in their life in any way, but they will take whatever handout they can get. My theory behind that is we will always continue to do those things because it will still always plant a seed. And especially in our community, that's like evangelism 101 is just being there when they need someone to be there. There's nothing more that you can really do at that point, because our community, this community that we serve is always hurting.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like you can, and people think you can throw money at it. You can throw money at it, but you're not going to fix it. It's an impoverished area. There aren't a lot of jobs in the area. It is what it is. You know, when we used to have all of the large corporations in the area that were manufacturing, there were lots of jobs. And while some of them are still there, a lot of them have downsized. And so they're not the same number of people working.
Right.
People are like, well, there are jobs everywhere. You're right. There are.
Yeah.
With some of the things you have to remember, I've experienced this myself. You have to they want you to have a bachelor's degree with 10 years of experience in order to get a job that won't pay enough to pay for the bachelor's degree.
Or it's like, how am I supposed to get the experience if nobody will hire the experience? Yes.
And so, you go to some of these manufacturing places and they'll hire you, but they want to pay you next to nothing to get you in the door, or they will give you a bonus.
Yeah.
Even if they're offering an exuberant amount of money, they're looking for temp work.
Right.
Because they don't want to add full-time employees because they don't want to offer benefits.
Yes.
They don't want to. It's just there's always little caveats.
catch.
So, like from the outside looking in, there's always work. There's always people hiring. There's always this. McDonald's, you can go work at McDonald's right now for like $16 an hour. But here's the thing: it's a part-time job, working 12 or 14 hours a week.
Right.
Well, who can live on that?
Right.
Like you can pay me $16 an hour, but I need to make that working full-time hours.
Yes.
So I have to work 5 part-time jobs in order to survive. And then nobody wants to work with another schedule. Everybody wants.
I was going to say,
we're-
it's impossible.
We're your priority.
Yeah,
we have to be your priority.
Yeah, I've done that without kids, and it's hard.
It's really virtually impossible at this point. So I think that's one of the things that our community experiences. And so just us being present and being available is probably one of the most crucial things that we can do.
And it's like the most crucial and probably the easiest even, like, I don't know.
And the better news is you can get out. You don't have to stay here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There are opportunities, but you have to build yourself up to that.
Yep.
And I wanted to go back to what you were saying about, God cares about you. Why would he? And when, obviously we're doing the 21 days of prayer and fasting, and the prayers that were sent on Monday, the Psalm where he talks about protecting you in your room at the very point of darkness.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like you're protected because, birth is, we have all the science to back it up for why it works.
Yeah.
And how a baby is born, but really think about it.
Well, who created all of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he's protected you for a reason in the darkness when you're in the womb, then he definitely cares about you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can relate living in an impoverished area.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But there are plenty of really successful people that's exactly where they came from.
Right.
And they had to learn from that environment, and they had to,
want to make
they
that
had to
leap.
had to want to grow,
Adapt and
overcome. And again, that's why I think it's important that young people get closer to God.
Yes.
As soon as you can get a young person to, start believing, to start getting into the Word, the better chances they're going to have. They're going to want to be successful. They're going to, they're going to want to be like, yeah, I don't have to stay here. I realize that everything around me is going against me.
They have to realize they're greater than their circumstance.
Yeah. So,
because circumstance, it will define you if you don't decide that it's not going to.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy.
No.
Well, and you're going to lose friends. You're going to lose connections with people that you have
You
here.
might have to move away from loved ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to make a lot of sacrifices.
The greatest thing that my wife and I ever did when we got married, and this is, I don't care, she's going to hear this and she's probably going to agree with me, I would say. The greatest thing that my wife and I ever did when we got married was move.
Yeah.
We moved almost to Columbus. We were an hour and a half away from everybody that we knew. So that meant when she got upset with me, she couldn't go stay with her mom.
Right.
That meant when I got upset with her, I had to come home because I had nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
We didn't have a bunch of money.
You had to depend on each other.
Right.
Yeah.
We were each other's rock. And that made a world of difference in our marriage because now when my wife is, and listen, my wife, before, she was very timid. If she was upset with me, she didn't get loud with me. She didn't say anything. She would just let me do my thing. I remember the first time my wife ever called me out for my bullcrap. I was like, I don't like this. But I realized something. My wife has become stronger because we were a team.
Yeah.
My wife has become stronger because I have equipped her and empowered her to be strong and independent. Listen, my wife left me right now. She'd take care of herself. I would be flat broke with nothing, and my wife would be living her best life. Like that's because she is strong and independent.
Yeah.
She wasn't like that when I knew her or when I met her.
Yeah.
Like that she lived at home and she relied on her mother to help cook and clean and do the laundry. My wife now, she doesn't need anybody. She doesn't need anybody because she wasn't going to allow circumstance to determine who she was going to be for the rest of her life.
Yep.
And that circumstance even being marriage. But I'm telling you, when we moved away, we didn't have a choice but to rely on one another.
Oh, yeah.
And even like every time I do marriage counseling, I tell people you can't vent to your parents. You can't vent to your best friend.
No.
It's not a thing because when you do it, so Sid, if you were to sit here and tell me something bad about Chase,
Right.
and in 2 weeks, you're like, oh, I was just upset.
Yeah.
I still know that about him, and I will never forget it.
Exactly.
And I will never look at him the same way.
Exactly.
People don't realize that.
Yep.
So then there's this, like, disconnect.
Yes.
And so I say that a lot. People will walk into church, sit down for the very first time, and I'll have somebody come over and go, do you know who that is? Like, no. That's so-and-so, and they know so-and-so, and I don't care.
Okay.
Like, I genuinely don't care.
Yeah.
We had a pseudo-celebrity show up one Sunday. I'll never forget this because Roger and I were, so somebody comes up to me and goes, do you know who that is? And I'm like, no, I don't. Who is it? And they tell me. And do you remember do you know who I'm talking about?
I think.
Okay, I'm not going to share because it's not my place, but they are related to somebody who not all people would think is a celebrity, but again, in the world that we live in, we like to romanticize some of these people. Anyhow, point being, everybody was like, oh, this has always been his church. It's always been his church. Ever since he lived here, it was his church. And I'm like, I don't care. Because
Where's he at now?
Here's what's going to happen. Right. Here's what's going to happen. Worship is going to end. I'm going to preach a message, whether he's in the building or not in the building.
Yep.
If he's a millionaire and wants to donate $500,000 to the church, great, wonderful. We'll take his money, but it's not going to change what I do. It's not going to change who we are.
Yep. Yep.
Like, for me, what we do here is what we do here, right? And that's what draws people or sends people away.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it.
Yep.
There are lots of there are lots of options, right? I could probably give you 5 churches off the top of my head that you could go to tomorrow, and that would be A-okay with me. Not that I don't want you. I'm just saying that not everybody's going to connect here. If you think that I'm going to change what I do in order to connect, you're wrong. Because that changes who we are then. It changes the DNA of this particular body, and that's not how we operate. So when we go out and evangelize, we evangelize how our church is. Like we're fun people. We enjoy having a good time. We like to laugh. You're not going to ever see me go to a marriage counseling session or anything like that where I'm with other and not laugh. Like, we're going to have a good time because the gospel is not meant to be hard. It's not meant to be confusing or difficult but people like to make it that way, right? People like to make it feel like, oh, well, you didn't say a sinner's prayer, so you can't be saved. You didn't get baptized, so you can't go to heaven. All of those things. Well, remind me how the criminal on the cross got to heaven.
Amen.
because he didn't have none of those things. I don't think he had a church membership form signed. I don't think any of that stuff happened.
Yeah.
So evangelism should not be a like, well, you got to get in a church.
Yeah.
You gotta. This is
shame
not
game.
about a building.
Yes.
It's not about a body
Right.
of people. This is about Jesus, and that's all.
Right. And accepting him in your
Yep.
heart.
Yep, it's really that easy. It really is. I've seen some churches doing some wild things, like when people get baptized. Then there's there's a whole list of things that they do after a baptism that like, oh, now you've done this step, and now you've done that step, and now you've done this
time
step.
for this.
As it, I'm like, well, when I get to step 9, do you kill me? Is that when I go to heaven? Like how? Like what's the end of this?
Yeah.
But there's always a class or
How
a
should I be timing this up?
right.
Yeah.
There's always a class or a program or something that you're supposed to be in order to grow spiritually. Here's the deal: to grow spiritually, you have to form a relationship with Christ, right?
Right.
Amen.
Like
Right.
it's that's the basis of what we do. We form a relationship that we then build. Somebody said once, well, I don't need to go to church to have a relationship with Christ. And then somebody else is like, well, yeah, but you also don't have to go home to be married. But if you stay away long enough, that relationship is inevitably going to suffer. And it's the truth, right?
Yes,
like,
exactly.
so,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying church is the answer. I'm saying being with like-minded believers is the answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Iron sharpens iron.
right. When you say to me, oh, I don't go to church anymore because I think it's just a bunch of hypocrites. Yup. And I guarantee you the person standing in the pulpit is equally as guilty. I don't care what church you go to. I don't care how perfect you think they are. I guarantee you I can't tell you how many pastors I have seen that have gone through divorce. They're pastoring and they realize, well, what I've been doing isn't okay. So now I'm going through a divorce. And they don't they're held to such a high standard that it's shocking when it happens. Well,
Right.
the fact remains it happens so often in the world that it's not even surprising.
Yeah.
You know the number one cause of divorce? Marriage. It's the number one cause.
Is that off of Mr. and Mrs.
I don't-
Smith? We just watched Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and I swear they say
I read that a long time ago, and it's
I-
always stuck with me.
I
but
swear they say that.
the so I
So
mean,
don't get married.
well, that's what I was going to say.
Bottom line.
If you are not capable of being in a healthy relationship, getting married is inevitably going to lead to a divorce or a really strong marriage. Listen, I am probably the most difficult person that I know. It's not a lie. I just I'm I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to be around people. I want to be in my family room in the basement with my pillow
And his
my,
monkey.
And your
my,
monkey.
my little capuchin monkey Ross. And that's where I want to live. But I
Have
realize
you made it clear that you don't have a monkey?
I don't have a monkey.
Okay, he doesn't have a monkey.
That doesn't mean that he doesn't want one.
Send one
Yes.
here.
Oh, don't send it. You ship it in a little box. I'll be shaking it, and it's
Yeah.
monkey.
Listeners in New Zealand will be sending you monkeys. It's like, quit sending monkeys.
Yeah, we end up with we've got a zoo
We've got mascot monkeys walking
just
around.
running around in the sanctuary. We don't have snakes. We've got monkeys.
We've got monkeys.
Oh boy. But because I know that I'm difficult and I know that I want things my way, I have to compromise a lot in life in general, not just with my wife, not just with my kids, but in life in general, I have to compromise a lot. And that's hard to do. So a lot of times people think that you can walk into church and that everything is going to be the way that you like it. But you're going to have to compromise a lot of that.
That's right.
You're going to have to be able to look at it and say, hey, that's not necessarily something that I want to be part of.
Yeah.
But there are other things that I do want to be part of. I don't.
Well, you got to keep your focus of why you're there in
Right.
the first place.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's not about programs. It's not about, well, we don't do mission trips. It's not about those things. It's not about the list of things that a church participates in. It's about forming a relationship with Christ and being with like-minded people. Because again, iron sharpens iron.
Oh, yeah. If you're going to a church and it makes you feel as though it's interrupting your relationship with God in some form, then okay, maybe you need to try a different church. But just because you don't like everything that goes on in the church and you don't like everybody that attends church doesn't mean, it's bad for you. That's not where you're supposed to be.
Or bad for everyone else.
Yeah, bad for everyone else. So, yeah, I think that's the most important thing is whatever you're doing, if you're finding God through evangelism outside of the church, if it's working for you, if it's keeping you closer to God, if it's helping you keep that relationship, well, keep doing it. By all means, don't quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
I'm not at my
and,
microphone, I need to argue that.
Yeah.
We need a wireless one. Hey, council, can we get that?
I don't have very many positive things to say about social media. All in all, I think it wastes humans' time. Like, you can just waste hours and hours of your time in this life on social media. I mean, you can drain 2-3 hours at a time and you don't even realize it. Instead of going and, working on your goals, doing what you want to do in life.
My wife is fasting social media right now, and can you believe that we can wash, dry, fold, and put away a load of laundry whenever you're not?
And it's not 7 to 10 business days?
It's not 7 to 10 business days when you don't have social media.
And I'm guilty of it myself, and I think, I got to quit doing this. And I even told myself, I just got to, when I get home, put the phone somewhere other than in my pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you
Put
go
it on
upstairs,
ring
put it on your bedroom.
Yep.
On the desk or in the drawer or somewhere other than on your person.
See, I do that. I couldn't find it.
I was going to say the same thing. Roger,
bad advice, Roger.
Yeah.
Bad advice.
Yeah, glue it to your forehead, Roger.
But yeah, that's the first step, is to get it away from you. But what I wanted to say was, I don't have too much good to say about it. But speaking about evangelism, I just saw is everybody familiar with who The Undertaker is, the wrestler?
Yes,
I know
brother-in-law.
Michael.
My brother-in-law named his dog Taker. After The Undertaker.
Oh,
obviously.
Sorry, I apologize. I got a church text, so I was looking at it. But are we wrestling? We're talking about wrestling?
Yeah.
Oh, let's
The Undertaker.
go, baby.
Well, obviously, if you know the character of The Undertaker, it's very dark.
Yes.
It's all about death.
Yes.
Darkness, all those things.
know
So
where
if you
you're
know
going.
the character, like, okay, this guy is probably as far away from God as possible, and you don't want anywhere near him. But he's been talking recently a lot about his newfound relationship with God, and he said the best thing his wife ever did for him was to restore his relationship with the Lord. So this is a guy that's obviously, he's had
he headbutts people for a living.
I mean, his finishing move is the tombstone. But,
for years, he put people in caskets,
setting them on fire.
Right.
And, but it turns out, he's this guy who's really, I think he's turning into a motivational type speaker.
Do you know offhand if he's the one who does DDP yoga?
Well, that's Diamond Dallas Page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was also, by the way, one of my favorite wrestlers.
Yeah. And he's another great example of what I'm talking about. But
Mick Foley's the same way too, isn't he? Isn't Mick Foley he has found, this is a weird one, but Mick Foley is obsessed with Santa Claus. And if I'm not mistaken, he is a mall Santa, because he just likes being Santa. Can you imagine seeing that guy dressed as Santa, his face all mangled from being beat up for so many years? But if I'm not mistaken, same thing.
He got run over by the reindeer.
A couple times. He is beat up.
Sorry,
but
Nick,
I think that's a good form of evangelism.
Yeah.
At least it's like, okay, so you can. We have our heroes in life, and like I said, I love professional wrestling. I've loved it since I've been a little kid, and I've known who The Undertaker was since I've been 10.
Yeah.
But now that he's kind of retired, and you see this different side of him, and you see what he's doing with his life after wrestling, and he's forming this relationship with God, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't you say his wife restored it?
Yeah, I think his wife was really the catalyst for that.
She had it before that.
Yeah.
But then something...
Obviously,
she had to water it,
life in that business.
Yeah.
Life in that business.
Oh yeah.
For a lot of those guys, they've been through it all.
It's you're on the road most of the year. I would guess that there's probably excessive drug use, whether it's steroids or.
If you watch some of those documentaries,
they form drinking habits, drug habits,
Yep.
Women habits, all that.
Yeah.
And,
real quick, do you remember the Survivor Series where he fought Kamala?
Yes.
And
that was his first one, right?
Was it?
Is that the one?
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
And then, they did that several years running. Who was it that ended up putting him in the casket? Was it Kamala?
That's a great question.
Because do you remember him, rising up out of the casket in front of the Jumbotron?
Yeah.
It was nuts. When I was a kid watching that, I was blown away by that. I was like, what is happening?
It might have been
my brother-in-law still puts those on, and I think I know which one you're talking about.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's epic. To me, and then the one Royal Rumble that I remember was outside. I don't know where it was at, Las Vegas or something, but it was an outside arena. And Jerry the King Lawler and Doink the Clown were wrestling, and they had the little minis that came out from under the ring. Do you remember that one? That was one of my favorites.
You know they're still doing WrestleMania?
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all of this stuff is still a thing. No, I couldn't now. I
I think it's WrestleMania 40.
Yeah.
My problem is
Crazy.
back then it was a lot different than it is today.
Yeah.
Like, the
Absolutely.
storylines were, I don't want to say
Original. Like,
more,
they were-
more wholesome, but now it's more about, like, there's...
Yeah.
It used to be for the younger.
Yeah, it was a
Yes.
family show.
Generation.
You could watch it. Now it's
Yeah.
not so
Right.
much
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
can I argue real quick if you're the evangelism thing, like if you're being fed through evangelism, hey, that's great, keep doing that. Can I argue that for
Okay,
just
yeah.
a second? My argument is not like if you're being fed, wonderful. However, I want you to think about something incredibly important. If you're paying into a TV ministry, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but if you are paying into TV ministries, it can get incredibly dangerous. I don't
You should
remember.
never pay for
You don't have to pay for Jesus.
Jesus.
No.
And if somebody tells you, well, if you give $100, Jesus is
Yeah.
going to do something great in your life,
Yeah, no.
he's lying.
Yes.
Because Jesus will do it for free.
Yes.
It doesn't cost
Agreed.
anything
Yep.
to receive a miracle. It doesn't cost anything. And so, not that I don't think you should support those ministries, but do it under the right pretense.
Yes.
Don't do it thinking that you're going to receive something because of it. I watched, and I wish Kenneth Copeland, I think it was. It was like this whole, he wasn't on stage. It was basically an infomercial is essentially how it was shot. And he kept saying that whatever it is that you have in your bank, that's what God wants you to give today. Oh. And he was like trying to convince people to give him whatever they had. Just send it to me. Just send it to me. And I don't to me, that's no different than predatory lending.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
do you remember those cash loans that you used to be able to get?
Yeah.
Like, the state of Ohio has finally outlawed those. Thank you, Jesus. But people would go there, borrow money, drive to the next one, pay them back, borrow more money, and drive to the next one and pay them. I mean, like, it was
Yes.
this.
We used to have what, 2 or
Vicious
3
cycle.
Oh yeah, you could get.
in
There were
this
like,
area?
yeah, they were everywhere.
Yeah.
and they were all different. So you could just keep borrowing from people and paying people back, and you never had any money, right?
Right.
And I think that's to me. When evangelists say that, it's the same exact thing. I don't view it any differently because all they're trying to do is get your money to support their jet habit. Do you know what I mean? They want to buy a new private jet. They want a new Escalade. Most of those people don't even have a relationship with their congregants.
Right.
Like, I don't know, and I don't want to speak ill of any of them because I don't know them and I wouldn't disgrace a man of God, but I'm saying, like, Joel Osteen, how many of his people can he genuinely know?
Yeah.
Like, how many people does he listen? I know for a fact there is a pastor of I don't want to call it a mega church, but a fairly large church, semi-locally. When he preaches his message, he comes off stage, he walks back to his office, he goes into a covered garage, gets into a car, and pulls out of the parking lot. He never once speaks with people in his building. The only people that he sees are his staff. Weekly staff meetings, they all come together. And he doesn't even see a worship team. He sees a worship leader or a music, what do they call that? I don't remember what they call it. They have a specific name for creative director. That creative director then puts together the worship teams, puts together that's crazy to me. Like, I got some of you guys that will stand outside my door for 45 minutes while I'm trying to go to the bathroom. Like, you don't care.
Hurry up.
Right. Knocking on the door. Is Pastor in there? And I don't mind that. Like, I want to be able to have time with you guys. But at the same time, like, I get that there's, like, when you come out of a sermon, you've got to decompress to a certain degree. I fully understand that. But I also I could never expect you guys to come here, pay into this storehouse, and not have a relationship with the person who's trying to lead
Right.
the spiritual end of the building. Like, I can't understand that. But that's how a lot of those large TV ministries work. I also will never pay, never, ever, ever pay to see a megachurch pastor preach. You can't put a price on. Like I said, if I charged you guys a cover charge of $60 a week to come in here, would you come? No, but you'll pay $60 to go see Stephen Furtick in Columbus. Right?
Our tithes would be up.
Yeah, our tithes would be up. Yeah, our tithes would be up. Yeah. No, they wouldn't, because nobody'd show up.
Oh, that's
it would be
true.
worse than it had ever been. Because if you $60 a week, could you imagine $60 a head? But we'll do that to go see somebody, and I understand that, like, Elevation, there's a music portion to that, but it's not a concert.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not what they're doing.
Right.
They have a pastor speaking. It is church. You're paying to go to church. The gospel is not designed to be inhibited by money. Do you know what I mean? Like, could I just walk in there and be like, hey, listen, I don't have anybody, but I really need Jesus. Do you think they'd let me in? Where's your ticket, bud?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's not gonna work like that. Yeah. And Stephen Furtick's not gonna, if I couldn't call him right now and want to ask him to pray with me.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have a conversation with him.
No, I doubt, because how many campuses does Elevation have now? 4 or 5, something like that in different states. So can you imagine trying to, like, if you were a pastor on another campus or a worship leader on another campus, trying to talk to the senior leader of your church? Chances are you couldn't.
No.
I'm not, and I'm not trying to. Just what they have does not make sense to me, because it's
not personal.
Well, there's a cost associated with it, and that cost to me is not $60. It's somebody's salvation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm putting the opportunity to have somebody saved. I'm putting a price tag on it.
Well,
it costs you $60 to get saved.
Not only if they have a bad experience, but like if they start to financially not have the finances to do it, that just gives them a huge sour taste in their mouth of, well, it's always been about money.
Yep.
And well, no.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, here, it ain't never been about money. We ain't never had any. It's just, it is what it is. It is what it is. I will say this. So I started putting up last week the previous week's tithes and the previous week's attendance, and then the total checking account balance. And I don't do exact because it's like it changes within minutes. It'll change. So when I put that up, I said to Alyssa, I said, are you sure that's right? Like, that seems really low. And she's like, no, that's right. That's absolutely correct. And I was like, all right, put it up there. That doesn't feel good. It never feels good to type that number. It never feels good. And so her and I were talking, and she's like, hey, I've got to go make a church deposit. And I was like, oh, great. Like, she goes, yeah, well, the checking account will be close to $10,000 once we make that deposit. It doubled.
Really?
It doubled. Think about that. Last week we had 44 people here.
Yeah, 46.
And that included kids, just so we're all clear.
Yeah.
That included kids. And we had a $2,200 tithe. Now, what I'm saying is this. Again, it's not that this is about money. But when we are doing the things that we're doing, we see growth inside of our buildings, which we're thankful for. But we typically take that money to keep the building operating, to do repairs, whatever. But then the rest of it, we're trying to give it away. Like, we want to be able to bless families. Yeah. We gave a $100 gift card to a lady we've never met before, had never been here. She had messaged us right before Christmas and needed groceries. She said, I carry a full-time job. I can pay all of my bills. I just can't ever get enough groceries. She said, and the worst part is I go to the food pantry and they make me feel like I'm stupid because I make enough money and they don't understand why. She's like, I'm trying to take care of 2 kids by myself.
She's in that weird.
It's like that
weird gap.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think all of us have been there at some point in our lives where, you can pay your bills. Like, I'm not uncomfortable, but I don't really want to eat mac and cheese or ramen every night.
Every day.
You know what I mean? So Alyssa and I are like, listen, we have money. We're not rich. I can't give you $1,000, but I can get you a $100 gift card to go buy some groceries, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to do. It's not about sitting on mountains of money. It's nice when you can put some aside. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the thing, knock on wood, this won't happen. But Foursquare could call us today and close the church.
That's right.
They'd be like, nah, we're not doing this with you anymore. Bye. Now, for us, the church brand is still ours, but they could take the building.
Yeah.
100%. Read the bylaws. They could absolutely 100% still snatch this building out from under us, even though they gave it back to us. Because the bylaw, and they could take all of our money. The bylaws say that the district supervisor has the ability at any point to come in and sign checks or make changes to a checking account on behalf of a church if a pastor is obstinate or not following Foursquare rules. Now, the one word that you could use to describe me is obstinate. It's probably the one consistent word that you could use to describe me. So, and it's not like because I don't believe them, but we don't, from a polity standpoint, from a ministry standpoint, I believe that everything that Sister Amy taught when she founded Foursquare was true and is true today.
That's right.
Because we were born out of the Azusa Street revivals. Like, that's when people were like laying on their face for days on end, like in the presence of God.
Evangelist.
Yes. Ooh. Well, and that's part of our Foursquare mantra.
Yeah.
But we have come so far from that.
Yeah.
We've walked so far from what Sister Amy believed that the denomination was going to do, because now we're afraid of what could happen if we don't do this or we don't do that, if we don't include this. And we are spending more money planting churches overseas than we're doing in the United States. Again, that's their call.
Yeah.
But I don't want to fund it.
Yeah.
Because I want to take care of the people in my backyard.
Right.
I want to go to my community, do realize what it could be. We have 9 acres here total. Could you imagine if we could put in basketball hoops and a playground and somewhere for our community to come and be, a safe place for our community to come and be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we could really change a community in doing that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're in a community where a lot of things have disappeared.
Right.
Skating rinks disappeared. Bowling alleys disappeared.
There's
A
no
lot of
safe
parks have
entertainment.
disappeared.
There's no
Yeah.
safe entertainment.
Yeah.
And listen, I can send my kids to the water park during the summer months. I think they get a discounted rate, $7 or something like that, being students.
Yeah.
But my kids know how to behave themselves.
Yeah.
So I can send them there and know that my kids are going to be safe, but I
Right.
don't know how the other kids are going to behave.
Yeah.
And that's barely 3 months out of the year.
Right.
Yeah,
Let's be-
exactly.
Right. And they close early and they
Yeah.
open late.
Kids poop in the
Careful.
pool.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that happens that some of it is out
Yeah.
of control if the weather
Yeah.
gets bad or whatever. My point is that we could do so much for our community, but we have to continue to give back to open churches in foreign countries. I don't understand that. That's one of my biggest, again, there's my obstinance. There's me saying, I don't want to do what you want me to do because I don't believe in what you're doing.
Right.
But I think that's fair. I think if the local church,
Well, if we stop like questioning our higher ups,
right, then they do whatever they
Exactly.
want. They do whatever they want,
Yeah.
and then we have no say over it, and we can't make a difference because we're tied to the difference that they want to make. Just think about that for how often, and Nick, from a government standpoint,
That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
that's
from a government standpoint,
Yep.
like mutiny aboard the good ship Lollipop, if that stuff starts happening. Do you know what I mean? Like there is going to be, you end up in civil wars because of that stuff.
Yep.
It's just dangerous to think about not questioning. And I tell everybody, listen, I said it last week, you listen to my message, you better go home and do your homework. Because if you don't and you take everything I said for the truth and I've lied to you, maybe one of these Sundays I'll just preach a whole message of just nothing but lies, just the whole message. Just wait for somebody to call me out. Because
Joe would.
he would. As soon as I started, he'd be like, "You're not right. That's not right. You need to stop." But my point is that there's so much that people they don't do their own work. They don't try, and so then they go out and evangelize, and they give. I don't want to say false information, but partial information, not complete information. I was talking about Jezebel spirit. Was it last week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking, Beth, why'd your eyes get so big, sweetheart? So I was talking about Jezebel spirit, and I realized that not a lot of people fully understand that. Like there are so many little caveats, and Jezebel always needs an Ahab, and no, she can operate without it. But you tell you what, she finds her Ahab, and she is strong and hard-willed. Like it's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother ball game. And then you'll talk to people who are like, "Oh, that's not a thing." I've seen it.
Yeah.
I have
exactly.
witnessed it. I can't even tell you. Me personally, I've witnessed it 3 times within I would say they were all council members. Every one of them. Because a position of authority is what she wants. She wants to be high and lofty. She wants to be able to say, well, I have authority and I can make changes and I can say and do and I can, but at the end of the day, she has no authority here.
Right.
We call it as such, and
I
it's
will not be an Ahab.
well,
Anymore.
and that's I was going to say the same thing, and I am just as guilty of that. Like if somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, can you believe?" and I'm like, "Yeah, heck yeah, I can."
Yeah.
And then you stop and think about it, like, probably shouldn't have had that conversation.
Right,
And
right.
when you realize that, that's when you make a difference. But
Yes.
it's really, really, really hard to do, isn't it? Like that's the stuff that you don't think about. But then you go out and evangelize as somebody who's carrying a Jezebel spirit, or even an Ahab spirit, or any spirit for that matter, and you're telling people, "Oh, well, I do this at church and nobody says anything." And then they're like, "What the heck kind of church do you?" I almost swore just now. I just want to be very. I almost swore. I was close. I was really close. Like, what kind of church do you go to? Right? Like, oh, that's not normal. That's not normal.
Yeah.
Like, I joked on Christmas Eve about snakes. That was purely a joke. But if you would have seen the looks on some of the people's faces, like they were like, "No, I'm out of here." Like, I don't care if they're in another room or not. I'm out of here.
Where's the nearest exit?
Right?
My mom probably never would have moved so fast.
And I watched a video of a young guy who his church handled snakes, and he has these snakes on his hand. Snake bites him. These are like rattlesnakes. These are poisonous snakes, and they're not like And it happened to his dad.
It's like when Jake the Snake put it on Macho Man.
Yes, similar to that. So we see we're wrapping back to.
Oh man.
Check it out on YouTube.
So the snake they were snake handling church. The snake bites his dad. Rather than call 911, they pray over him, and he dies. Well, that must have been God's will, right?
Wrong.
Okay. So then the son takes over the church. He starts pastoring. He gets bit by the snake. You know what they did?
They prayed over it.
No, they called 911 that time because they done learned their lesson. What I'm saying is sometimes like we'd like to pretend like this is like, oh, well, God is going to take care of that.
Yeah.
He gave us medicine for a reason, y'all.
Exactly,
Like
exactly.
there are some things that we just like to be stubborn about. And
Yes.
so we have to recognize that not everything is going to be our way. That sometimes we have to, and again, evangelize as such.
Yes.
Like I can't, it's not always what's happening in our building. Oh, well, we do this or we do that. I had somebody say to me one time, I don't remember how it went. Oh, I got a phone call and it was a lady on the phone. It was a lady that I know very well. And she was talking about a church group at a hotel that she was working at. And she's like, oh, and they were a Pentecostal church. They were crazy, like speaking in tongues and doing all sorts of stuff. And I just sat there and listened and I chuckled at the end. And she was, I don't remember what she said. She says, that's not for me. And I said, oh, well, my church is Pentecostal. I'm a Pentecostal pastor. And she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, no need to apologize. I said, it is what it is. Like, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think you grow into that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's like,
Yeah.
so you can't always evangelize expecting people to come to your church.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
this is not somewhere that somebody shows up for the first time
Right.
and typically comes back a second. Like a lot of times people
They're forced into
yeah,
it.
yeah. We chain them in the kids' ministry room and they have to work for the rest of their lives. Mwahaha. No, I think a lot of times people realize that like they get saved in another church and then they come to a church where it's a little more charismatic and that's they learn that, okay, there are biblical truths in this. But it's uncomfortable. I remember I brought one of my best friends one time. She's sitting in the back with me and Florence says, we're all just going to pray in our heavenly language. And we're all just like praying in
Like,
tongues.
put your headphones on.
Yeah, we're all just praying in tongues and this is happening. And my friend is sitting next to me and like she's got her head down. And I'm like, she's speaking in tongues. She's speaking Spanish. She's fluent in Spanish. She didn't want to be laughed out, but she didn't know what else to do. Like she's like, this is crazy. Y'all are crazy.
Like when you're lip syncing and
Yes.
it's like watermelon.
Yes. So I was like, that's when we left. She told me that I was like, that's funny. Like, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. But that's like you can't expect people to come in here
Yes.
for the first time and be like, oh, this is perfectly normal.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't question this at all.
Yes.
So
But what you need to do is go to another denomination and basically be yourself.
yes, exactly.
that
You
to
grow
help-
into
And
it.
it's-
Right.
And evangelize that way there.
Well, as a pastor, go to another church that's not in your denomination and basically preach the way that you preach at your church.
Oh,
Yeah.
And it's definitely an eye opener.
well, we did that one Lenten service here. It's 300 plus people in the building for a Lenten service.
Well, they should have known they were coming to this church.
Well, they didn't. Apparently, nobody warned them. So you aren't allowed to preach. Like you aren't allowed to preach in your home church. So I did not preach here. I preached at Bethel, which is a Pentecostal church, but it was during COVID. So I was on TV. It was super cool. Like I loved it. Thought it was the coolest thing in the whole world. Like they had like TV cameras, and I was like, man, I feel really cool. But anyhow. But ours was right before that. Ours was
Yes.
the last in-person service. And so we had to do music. As soon as we started worship, you should have seen the looks on these people's faces. Like they were like, what did we get ourselves into? And who ended up preaching? Pastor Rod Phillips preached. And so it was still a Pentecostal message,
Yeah.
but nothing like what we did during worship. I mean, scared the daylights out of all of them. We've never been asked to do it again since then. It's not a joke. We haven't. So they did have a couple of open dates and I volunteered to host.
How'd that work
Have
out?
Well,
heard back?
they have not messaged me back. So I'm not sure if we got the spot, but it is what it is.
It's okay.
Yeah. But again, I know that like while that was applying a little bit of pressure to,
Yeah.
let's say, a Presbyterian or a Methodist or whatever, like it's not something the first time that they're going to experience go, this is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times too, it's like the music is too loud.
Yeah.
And I'm in the back in the sound booth going, turn it up. So
It's not loud enough.
not loud enough.
I won't forget, my aunt came to this church.
Oh, really?
I didn't know she was here. It's when we were having services in the gym.
Oh, okay.
And so she like left immediately. My mom's like, well, your Aunt Nancy went to your church. I said, oh, she did? She's like, yeah. She's like, you ought to call her.
She ain't never coming back.
I called her. I said, hey, I hear you came to church. I said, I missed you. She's like, oh, I had to get out of there. I said, really? She's like, oh, yeah. I wanted to go once that music started. She's like, but I didn't want to be rude. She's like, so I stayed. Oh, my, she said.
It's one of those, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not for everybody. But this church has always been that way.
Yeah.
We've always done contemporary worship music. We've always done, I shouldn't say always, but since I've been around, we've always done contemporary music. And so again, but I think that's one of the things that make us a little more
Different.
a little more unique.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things with worship too, while we're working on live worship right now, the videos for the season that we've been in have been amazing because it hasn't been about people.
Yes.
It hasn't been about, nobody is like, oh, well, I get to sing this week.
Yeah.
It's
the solo.
we do this because this is ushering in the presence of the Holy Spirit.
right.
That's why we're here. We're here to listen to these songs, to get into a mode of worship. That's the idea. And that has been really powerful in the season that we're in. So, yeah.
I just wanted to say the whole thing about Jesus believes in you.
Mhm.
And so they were saying this in the same podcast. Kind of evangelism. Basically, we're being disciples,
Mhm.
but disciples is in the Bible so many times.
Mhm.
But Christian, like the word Christian or Christianity, it's like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And they used to actually like use that as like almost like a slur, like, well, you're just trying to be you're trying to be Jesus, you know? Well, then that's how it ended up being like, yeah, you know what? We are trying to be like Jesus. Like they turned it into a good thing.
Yeah.
Like 922 used to be like, oh, you're a 922er. Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay. Well, then
we've turned
there was a
that around,
turnaround.
haven't we?
Exactly. So I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like I really resonated with that. So
So I really, really thought that you would chase after the rise and fall of TV evangelists.
Well, and we really could. I mean, we could spend a whole day
that
talking
could be
about
next
that.
week.
We could run a whole day talking about that. But here's the thing. All right.
Part 2's next week, everyone.
Okay. So
Well, just keep in mind, this is growing together.
So I have never been into TV evangelists. But when you think about Tammy Faye Baker, when you think about Wigglesworth, what was his first name?
Smith, was it?
Yes, I think that's right. Like when you think about all of those
Was
people,
it Ernest Angley?
maybe.
Is that how you said it?
I
Angley?
think he's
Yeah.
still preaching.
But here's the
What?
one.
Yes,
Here's the
he
one.
is.
The one that gets me is also still preaching.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, he has a church in Akron. I believe
old
it's in
is he?
Akron.
He's old.
Here's the one. Here's the one. Do any of you know Dave Lombardi?
Yeah.
Brother Dave?
I've heard.
So-
I used to listen to him on the radio.
Brother Dave, you still can. Brother Dave used to plant Foursquare churches. He was a Foursquare pastor through and through, and he would plant Foursquare churches. He's planted churches in Wyoming, Oklahoma, all over the place. But he settled down in an old grocery store in Canton, and it is Trinity Gospel Temple.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
us.
So yes. So listen, he has a TV ministry, he has a radio ministry, he has a prison ministry, and all his TV series is broadcast into prisons. Okay. He has a full brass section in his band. I'm talking this is a big deal. Dude had a stroke on stage and continued to preach. He said, you guys wouldn't blame an old man if he sat down, would you? They brought him a chair. He sat down.
He's a Teddy Roosevelt of evangelists.
Listen, he preaches the message. They walk him off stage, and he says to his wife, I need to go to the hospital. And they take him to the hospital, and sure enough, dude had a stroke on stage.
Wow.
They just celebrated, I don't remember how many years of ministry. It was a whole ordeal in his church. His wife had to walk him across the stage. Dude is old, all right? Old. And he is still preaching, and he is an evangelist through and through. Now, here's the thing. He's not a multimillionaire. Because the money that he made in all the years of ministry, he has
Went
given
right
back
back
to
in.
his
Exactly.
communities,
Yeah.
into his church, into his building, into his community, whatever it was. That was what he did. He never took more than he needed in order to survive. His wife was always the secretary at the church. He didn't have personal assistants. They did it all themselves. Mind blowing, right? Okay. Now, I want to just for a second mention the Mr. Jimmy Swaggart. I love Jimmy Swaggart, okay? I love his music. I love everything about him. This dude is forever old, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
How old is he?
Oh.
Like 1.5 million. Like, he's
Yeah.
like probably older than the hills. He might be the same age as Jesus. I don't know. But he's old.
Yeah.
But he's still preaching.
Yeah.
Who was his cousin?
I knew that's where he was
I
going.
don't know.
That's
Who is
why
his
I
cousin?
Oh,
wasn't.
come on. You don't know?
I don't know.
Ew.
Jerry Lee Lewis.
Oh, I did know that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I did know that. Because then they had another cousin that was famous too.
Mickey Gilley.
Mickey Gilley. That was it.
Yeah.
Because it's like a whole like musical
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Okay. So my thing with Jimmy Swaggart is he has profited from ministry. So what is the difference between two evangelists in that fashion? Do you know what I mean? Like Dave had all of the same opportunities that
Swaggart had.
had. And I'm using him because they would have been like in that same like era
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
television ministry when it would have been on the rise, right? So what is the difference? I think the difference is heart. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Jimmy Swaggart because I think your grandpa really likes Jimmy
Yeah,
Swaggart,
but
right?
I don't know if he listens.
Well,
to
I
me.
don't care. Your grandma's listening. I don't want her
Yeah.
trying to tell on me. and get
She's
me
probably
beat
like,
up.
"Go, Michael."
What I'm saying is that if you're pouring money into a Jimmy Swaggart style ministry, that money is just being spent on personal assistance and new cars and like just all of the things that don't really make ministry, right?
Yeah.
You're not putting a new roof on the building. You're not paying for an air conditioner. You're not helping to re-drywall a kid's classroom. What you're doing is spending money on things that don't necessarily make ministry,
Yeah.
right? But when you pour into a local ministry like Brother Dave's ministry, our ministry, Bethel Worship, any of those places, when you pour money into those ministries, that money is spent locally.
Yeah.
You talk about shop local. How about we worship local?
Yeah. No kidding.
Like we stop thinking mega. There are churches that have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in their bank accounts.
Time out. You could do something with that. You know how Black Friday is, and then
Giving Tuesday, you have Cyber Monday.
Well, what's the Saturday? It's small
business Saturday.
Worship Sunday.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. We're gonna have a whole
Whole weekend.
whole weekend. Yes. Yep. Yeah. It really is mind-boggling to me that all of the same avenues are there for all of these people, and yet some people are stingy with that money, and it's all about how much can I make versus how much can I give. So
It's almost like once you have that money, you're like, what could I put this money to?
Yeah.
Greed.
Yeah.
yes,
Then
yeah,
it's-
and the love of money is the root of all evil.
1 Timothy 6:10.
Yep, that's what it becomes. That's what when you start talking about. I mean, you could. Oh my gosh, the TV evangelists that have been wrapped up in scandals. Like you could go into that for days.
Yeah.
But some fruitful people do come out of that.
Well, but here's my thing too. And again, this is where I defend those ministries. I can't, from a personal standpoint, you can't understand how hard it is to look at our ministry and go, well, we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to change this and we need to do that. Do you know how badly I want to change the carpet in the sanctuary? So badly. But that carpet will last through a nuclear holocaust. I promise you. There won't be a building left, but you'll know where it stood because the carpet will be there. Right? But here's the thing. I want that. That's a selfish desire. That doesn't change ministry. It doesn't make the church operate better. It's just ugly carpet. Like thank you to the people who selected that. But the point is there's going to come a day when I'm not here anymore and people are going to walk in and go, why did they paint this room this color?
Right. Well, just like when you're buying a house, like you're not going to love every aspect of that house. You're going to have to make it your own when you get it, and same thing.
My point was really that while all of those pastors are struggling, like they have things that are happening inside of those ministries. Every ministry has that. Every ministry has people or places or things that you're not always proud of. Do you know what I mean? You look back at those moments when I wish I would have handled that differently, or I wish we would have talked to that person differently, or treated them differently, or given them more, or whatever. And you can't take that back. You can't change it. It is what it is.
Well, I think the important thing then is that if you are, following an evangelist on TV, don't make that person your idol.
Yeah.
Be very careful. Don't make those people your idol.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get the word from them, but don't make them your idol. Don't make them the reason why you tune in every week. Make sure your eyes are fixed on the Lord, not on those people. I grew up. I was little, and it was Jim Bakker and Tammy Faye. That's why I remember my great grandparents watching. Tammy with the mascara going down her face. It's an image you can't forget. But they were, good Christian people, and they washed them regularly.
Yep.
So yeah, there's good that comes
I-
out of
and
it.
again-
but you just can't get too
Too
Wrapped up in-
wrapped up
into
in
it.
them.
Yeah.
Because again, you can't touch that. You can't
Yeah.
feel that. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't see what's actually happening
Exactly.
behind the
Yeah.
scenes.
Mhm.
Oh, I wish I could say something right now, but I just can't.
So much transparency in a small local church too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we love to put numbers up on the board. We love to be able to talk about what it is that we talked about what we did in a year's time maintenance wise in this building. I would like to we are way over time. I would just like to state that last year alone, Roger and I probably finished 30 maintenance projects in this building, none of which were anything to sneeze at. Nothing was huge, but like this whole side of the building has new light fixtures. Is that right?
Yeah.
Most of the other side has new light fixtures. Those are big projects. We've put carpet in. We've built the sound booth. What else have we
That
done
was
this
a
year?
big job.
That was a big job.
Yeah.
It was like 4 weeks. What else have we done? I mean, we've painted almost everything on this side of the building. Like, we have put a lot of time into the building, and it hasn't seen that level of maintenance in years.
Yeah.
And because we had gotten to a point where we were just happy just being able to survive.
Yeah.
And when we made the decision, we don't want to survive anymore. We want to thrive. We want to welcome people into the building, and silly stuff like putting a changing table in the ladies' restroom.
Or even like the handicap
Right.
things.
I know that stuff seems silly, but I saw 2 moms with newborn babies have to change their babies on the counter in the ladies' restroom. That's not fair to those moms, right? If we want to draw young people, if we want to have new, fresh faces, what do?
Yeah.
Bring the building up to that standard.
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
So I would just as we continue to grow this year, and I keep saying that it's gonna be more this year than it has ever been. We're gonna be greater blessings than we've ever had. I genuinely believe that, and I think that that's where we're gonna end up. I think we're gonna have amazing things happening. So,
Amen.
God is on the move.
as my kids would say, God is on the moon. God is on the moon. Look, well, you're not wrong, but that's not how the song goes. Just so we're clear.
I thought about that when I said
Nick, will you pray for us tonight, please?
Lord, thank you for bringing us all together here this evening. We have some great new members, and we're very thankful for that. Just always help us to follow your word, to learn your word, no matter what the source of that word is.
Yeah.
Just help us keep focused on your word, and always just allow us to take that word, carry it on to new people. Always striving us to make that one of our main goals, is to learn the word and to pass it along to other people.
Yes.
And no matter what form that may be, as long as it's building a relationship with you. I pray that everyone gets home this evening. I pray that everyone has a great week. To our listeners out there, I hope you're blessed. I hope you're having a wonderful week and a great start to your new year. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.